What's happening, guys? James Blonde here with MMOHuts.com, this time with a first look at another one of our most anticipated games for 2015 called SkySaga, developed by SmileGate and published by Radiant Worlds. Now, SkySaga is a brand new voxel-based crafting adventure game that is multiplayer like Trove, but still very different in a lot of ways. In fact, this game is more like a combination of Minecraft with a little bit of Landmark, plus Trove, and Albion Online, and you'll start to see why as we go along here. So, currently the game has been in alpha in Europe for a couple of months now, but as of recently started up alpha in North America, but this first time around, it's only for a limited time. In fact, by the time you see this video, the first alpha will have ended in North America. But even in the first alpha, there's a lot to discover and talk about in this game, so I'll give you guys a nice rundown of what to expect, and maybe a little bit more. So when you first load into the game, you start off at what looks to be a tutorial. And it is, sort of, but it's actually your home world that you can do with as you please as you sort of progress in the game. The game doesn't actually have a main menu, so to speak of, at least not yet, so as soon as you load up, this is what you see. And the very first time you load into the game, you get to make and customize your character. And as of right now, you can choose from 3 different races, which they call tribes, 3 different hairstyles, hair color, and skin color options, and the choice to be male or female, of course. All of it's just customization options, no special stats to any particular tribe. You can be human, reptile or dino looking, or cat-like, which as you can tell here, that's what I chose. So I've got to admit, there are a lot of cool visuals in this game so far, but the art style itself also looks really good in my opinion. I like how the characters have the whole unattached arms and legs thing going on. I mean, it's kind of like Rayman, but you know, it fits well for some reason. Anyway, your home world, this is what it looks like for everyone when you start out. It provides you with a decent amount of starter resources like trees and dirt, and your first basic tool you find lying around, which is a sharpened rock. And of course, you've got chickens living here, and yeah, they're all spies. All of them. But one cool aspect about your homeworld is they basically give you a cool starter home that you can build onto. The other interesting feature here in the game is in order to access different types of game systems like PvP or even the social menu, for example, you have to advance in some way or another. Like for example, with gaining access to the friend system, you have to first craft a metal plate to repair your airship here. This lets you start making friends in the game, and then from here you can go and visit their homeworlds and venture with them to the same locations. For PvP, you have to essentially level up enough and then gain access to the PvP tower. So there's some aspects that are quite different in this voxel-based game that you might not be used to in others, and that's sort of only the start of the game's unique features. Once you make your way to the basement, so to speak, of your homeworld, you'll notice a lot of crafting equipment and starter resources already available for you, like the keystone oven here, and the keystone fragments that let you craft your first keystones, letting you venture out into the different biomes, and I'll definitely talk about that a little bit more in a minute. You'll also notice there's a lot of iron here, so you can easily start crafting some tools and weapons early on, but once the stuff is gone, you have to head out through the portal and, you know, get more. The crafting system is a bit different in this game. There is an abundant amount of tools like you'd find in Minecraft, for example, or Landmark. In fact, there's actually more weapons in the game than there are tools, which is pretty cool. So your primary tool is your pickaxe, and you use this for mining everything. There isn't a shovel or regular axe or anything, so you don't have to worry about mining certain materials that could be detrimental to the durability of your pick. It has a durability mechanic, it just goes down normal for everything. The only negative attribute in this situation is when you try to use your pick for combat. Not near as effective as a weapon. And that being said, you can use different materials to make the same tools with, like you can in Minecraft, but each item has a fairly simple recipe that may or may not require any sort of prerequisites on top of that to craft. But for example, you can make an iron pickaxe, or a gold pickaxe, or even a rose iron pickaxe, or any other metal materials that you might find in the world, and then you can use different types of wood to make that same pickaxe, and in doing so, with the different metal and the different woods, you get items cosmetically different for sure, but they also perform a bit differently as well. At least that's what I've heard from some of the developers that I ran into while streaming the game. In the current state of the game, there isn't any visual representation or anywhere that it tells you that making items with different materials makes it stronger, lighter, heavier, or more powerful in any way, but they do in fact make a difference. And until they put that information in the game, it's probably best to determine that by trial and error, and also looking at how rare the material is. Super rare materials are bound to be more effective in some way over the more common materials. I've been using the pink iron pick, and it seems to be doing just fine. Okay, so on to keystones. So these are items that you can craft that let you travel to different worlds that are separated by different biomes a lot of the times. The green one is the first one you start out with, which is the easier world to handle. This is where you find plenty of early on materials and start to figure out where you want to start skill-wise, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. The white keystone is a bit more challenging, and it takes place in a snowy environment that puts a whole other element on the matter, and that's keeping yourself warm. So not only are the enemies more difficult here, and you run into stuff like yetis, but you also have to stay inside or near a campfire often to keep from freezing to death, which is interesting. Your body temperature starts to drop, and you'll notice this happening by this meter here. And the best thing to do in this case, if you don't have a campfire ready, is to start digging into the side of a hill or something like that to keep warm. Beyond these two keystones, you have the light and dark versions of the white and green keystones. These offer even more challenging creatures to run into, so the environments are even more challenging. Well, at least the dark ones do. The light seem to be a little bit easier, so it's almost like a easy, medium, hard version of different biomes. But the way you make these keystones is by harvesting the keystone fragments of the different types, and you find these in caves and sometimes in chests after fighting some of the more elite enemies. But sometimes you also find dark hearts from the boss type enemies in the game, and these are used to craft the dark keystones, which, like I mentioned, are the more challenging ones. Now, once you've crafted a keystone, you can place it in the portal here, which looks freaking awesome, I've got to admit, and go to these different worlds which are only semi-procedurally generated. And I say that because a lot of the times you run into the same areas, maybe in different biomes, like the same buildings and the same large cave systems, it seems. But beyond that, they are really random, especially when it comes to the materials that you find inside them. When you enter one of these worlds, you might notice other players around, and it's kind of like Trove in a sense that it's a multiplayer open world now, and you can go through and clear out enemies together. Now, one major thing that is definitely unique in this game is the combat and the way you can dual wield tools and weapons. First off, your hotbar here, you can basically equip loadouts instead of just an item at a time. So slot 1 and 2 of each of these 4 pertains to your right and left hand. This gives you an option to have a pick and torch together, a torch and block together, a sword and shield, 2 swords, or whatever you want it to be. The even cooler part about this is when it comes to weapons, you can attack differently based on what weapons you're wielding and what hand they're in. And on top of that, there are quite a few weapons you can find and make in the game. You've got swords, shields, maces, bows, daggers, and a lot of two-handed versions of some of those too. And you can mix and match them to, say, have your right hand hit heavy with a mace or your left hand swipe quick with a sword, depending on the style you might want. I personally like the combo sword and mace, and then another slot set up with a sword and shield so I can block some of the heavy hitting enemies. There are also different ways you can attack, and there are combos in this game. The developers actually put out a video showcasing some of the weapon combinations as well as attack combinations. Single click is a basic attack, double clicking is a quick attack that also sort of lunges you forward a bit, and triple clicking is a heavy attack. You can also jump and swing to do an instant heavy attack. You can also access these same attacks in different ways. If you sprint using shift and click, you can skip the basic attack and go straight to the quick attack. Now, when you wield 2 weapons, the combos work a little differently. The heavy attack uses both weapons to hit at the same time for an extra heavy attack. You can also do this while jumping in the air, but there's a little bit of a risk involved. If you get hit while in the air doing this, you take extra damage, sort of the payoff there. The combos actually get kind of advanced once you have 2 different types of weapons, like the sword and the mace, for example. You can also hold and charge a weapon if you double click and hold them. The longer you hold it and charge it, the more damage it does once you release it. And the same thing applies for your picks. If you're mining with 1 pick, you can double click and hold to charge it for a stronger hit. If you're mining with 2 picks, you can mine twice as fast, which is super helpful, as you can tell here. And if you jump and swing, you do a heavy hit with both picks at the same time. It's really cool. So there are a lot of combinations you can go with, and it goes well with not only the PvP aspect of the game, but also the PvE, because a lot of the enemies can get really tough, and you have to block and dodge by double tapping W or S for forward and backwards, and at the same time do a lot of kiting, because even with a lot of armor, you can be pretty squishy going up against some of the warlords, for example. Unless, of course, you set back and poke them with arrows from across the room. Yeah, that works too. But that also brings me to one huge aspect I liked about this game, which is all of the convenience features it has that you've pretty much always wanted in Minecraft-like games, but haven't actually had until now. At least without mods. Like, for example, you can carry around torches. You probably realized it by this point in the video, but it's really nice to be able to hold on to the torch and light your way versus placing them every couple of feet to keep, you know, the place lit up. Now, the drawback here is that if you want to dual weapon combo, and it happens to be dark, you better have put down a few torches before you start the fight, because, you know, otherwise it's going to be hard to see. So that's one of them. Another one is when you're mining and strike a block, it stays partially damaged for a long time, and this gives you the ability to go back and hit it later, or jump and hit it before it, you know, regenerates its health and becomes a brand new block again. Also, instead of having materials harder to mine and take forever, like obsidian in Minecraft, for example, you just get tired when you mine certain materials, and once you run low on energy, you've got to stop and take a break. So there's no blocks in this game that take forever to mine. Another one is how much materials you actually get when you mine. For example, I've got a quest here that's having me harvest 80 pieces of wood. Well, if I chop this tree down and maybe only a part of this other one here, I will have all of the wood that I need, just with these two trees, basically. Each swing here breaks off 3 pieces, essentially, so you can see how much resource yield trees have in this game. The same thing goes for mining ore and keystone fragments. You're actually getting a lot more than you think you are, which feels nice because it's a lot less grindy in a lot of cases. And these are just some of the quality of life features that I'm liking in this game. You can also craft a lot of stuff without a crafting station, and then you can turn around and pick that crafting station back up after using it with one click. Plus, if you're using something that is currently crafting something else and it finishes, all you have to do is walk near it to pick up that item, which makes farming stuff a lot more easy. You automatically collect the ore and keystone blocks, whereas the lesser important materials you have to pick up with E, so you can decide what materials are going into your inventory if they're sort of trash materials and it's not filling up your inventory. And I can honestly go on and on about these features. But there's one last one I want to talk about, and it'll lead me into my next topic, and that's the Chronicle, which is the guidebook slash Pokedex, if you will, and it shows you information about materials as you find them and where they're typically found, recipes and item information, and skills, which has to do with the questing system in the game. It's really nice though. From your inventory you can mouse over items and press Y to bring up information about that item in the Chronicle, so it's a super useful tool and part of the quality of life features I was talking about. That also, like I said, has to do with the questing in the game. There are different skills you can learn as you go along, and you get to choose sort of what you want to do to earn XP for the most part. And by skills, I mean professions like blacksmith, knight, architect, that sort of thing. This is kind of where I feel the game gets a little like Albion Online in the fact that you get to choose what quest you do to pertain to what skill you're wanting or needing to progress in order to obtain something else. For example, when you go around looting things, you might run into recipes, like this one here, for example. Metal captain's gloves. I have to be rank 3 blacksmith in order to unlock this recipe, and in order to level up my blacksmithing to rank 3, I've got to look at my Chronicle here and do these 3 things, at least to get to level 1, and then I can just add them to my quest log like I've done with my architect ones here. Once I complete these, I get XP and rank up that profession. Now, I still get the flexibility of choosing other ways to get XP, like I mentioned. You sort of get an option to choose this. For example, if I look at one of the materials that I've found in the Chronicle here, carbon for example, I can add this to the quest log, say I found a lot of it for some reason, and there you go. I only need 1 more to get XP for harvesting that. The flexibility here is really nice, and it's that sort of thing that can keep the game really fun over a long time. Okay, on to other things. So there isn't a hunger system in the game, but you've probably noticed by now there's food, and a lot of different types. Well, for now, the different types don't really make a difference other than how much they provide you health-wise. It's like a piece of meat gives you 2 hearts, whereas, you know, a mushroom gives you 1. So in this game, health is food. If you notice here, if you take damage, your hearts go away. But if you eat food, you get small hearts back in its place that helps half as much as it does taking damage if it was a whole heart. Hopefully that's clear. The way you get this back is to restore them at a campfire, which you can share with nearby players as well. It's a really interesting mechanic, and I'm starting to like it. I think it keeps a nice balance between challenging and practical, because you have to confirm your health gains, essentially. So like I mentioned in the beginning, this game is still in alpha, so at this point there isn't any sort of cash shop in the game just yet, nor is there any sort of indication as to what might be the monetized element in the game. They've got plenty of options they can go with to keep the game fair and not at all pay to win, like cosmetic options, decorations, XP bonuses, and that sort of stuff. But who knows? I have a feeling though, with the quality that has already been put into the game at this point in alpha, we're probably not going to be disappointed in their decision on that. But anyway, guys, there's still a lot more I could share about SkySaga, but that covers a lot of the game's basic elements. I didn't get a chance to talk about the PvP, the fact that the game has a built-in picture and social system that you can share right to Twitter, more advanced crafting, some of the harder biomes, but I've got to say overall, I'm really liking this game. I think it separates itself even more than the other voxel games out there, and it's only an alpha. Absolutely no drawbacks as of yet, and I think I pretty much confirmed our decision to have this game as high as we did on our most anticipated games for this year. So if you want to check out more gameplay and part of me discovering what I've learned so far in SkySaga, check out my stream highlights video right here. But for overall information about the game, head over to the game profile at MMOHuts.com, and until next time, guys, that's going to be it for me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.